What's been the hardest part of filmmaking for you to learn?
The hardest part has been for me to learn to give up some of my moment-to-moment control and to realize that in doing that, I actually gain artistic control. I came to filmmaking, I think, from the visual side, and I thought that when I started filmmaking, that editing would be my favorite part of the process, where it's just me and I can make every decision. And for a while it was, and now my favorite part is being on set with an amazing cinematographer, with amazing actors, and being open to what that process yields. And it's been a hard journey because it felt like I was giving up directorial vision at first. Because frankly, I think I had a misunderstanding of what directorial vision is. I think I thought it was, oh, I'm gonna micromanage every single detail. And what I've really come to realize is that if I know very clearly what I want the audience to feel, what the point of the movie is, if I know that and I can communicate it, then I can actually delegate a surprising amount of work and I will literally get that thing I wanted because people who know the point and know the goal, but then have space to sort of do their own work, they produce excellent work. And if you communicate well, it is work entirely in sync with what you wanted.
And then there's the flip side of someone who's just too loose with everything. And I've seen a lot of really brilliant, creative people like that, but they never rein themselves in and then they never finish things. So how is it for you to know that you have the opposite problem and just see, are you sort of in awe sometimes of some of these messy creative folks? Or do you sort of see the how they say every polar opposite is actually, there's like a lot of similarities? Or
I love sort of seeing other filmmakers' process for making stuff. And one of the ironies of being a director is you spend very little time getting to see other people direct. I'm so envious of actors sometimes who get to go from project to project and just see all these different approaches. Yeah, I feel like I've learned from so many different kinds of directors. From the ones that are just completely no plan, no stuff. I've learned cautionary tales, but honestly, in there a little bit of there's something that comes out of that freedom. And for sure, even from the overprescribed, the Hitchcockian storyboard everything, I've learned something too. All of it to me seems like there are lessons, good and bad, in there. And I think I'm always sort of, adjusting as I go.
Do you see your students being planners, or are they more like, hey man, let's just get a camera and shoot. We'll figure the story out when we're there?
In general, I think that the students that I interact with, through no fault of their own, I think underestimate the level of planning required to use even our seemingly accessible digital cameras. They're growing up in an era where they can take their phone out and press record and get video seamlessly without any real thought, right? I don't mean intention, but it's just easy to do. And so I think they go through a learning curve that's perfectly understandable of realizing that even with a DSLR, which is a relatively easy to operate piece of machinery, there are a lot of things you have to pay attention to get it to come out right. And just literally what's the f-stop and the f-stop and exposure and the ISO and the resolution, and that making them go through those steps so that the images are what they want is one of the big things that I sort of focus on.
Do you think having access to too much information hurts people? Because just think about Gen Xers. I craved all that, and there wasn't really a place except for going to the library and looking on microfiche for something. But I wonder if it almost hurts people nowadays because there's just an overabundance of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to ask. How does just the amount of information and perspectives and advice and technology that are flowing into us, how does that affect the creative process? Because in some ways I think of the creative process as being a very solitary, quiet thing for me, that I'm at my most creative when I've built a bubble, even if it's for a few minutes, to just think in isolation. That being said, I do think all of that stuff is fuel for the process. And yeah, I'm kind of excited. One of the things when I first fell in love with Instagram, it was just the ability to see photos of people's lives all over the world. And undoubtedly that influenced me as an artist. And so as much as there are times in which I feel oh my gosh, the news and social media and everything else overwhelms and is a certain amount of background noise that is distracting, I also have to believe that it is, and I do believe that is also enriching my life experience. And I think anything that enriches my life experience sort of has a result creatively.
So with let's say Gen Y or Gen Z, just having access to so much information, being able to just ask a question and get so many different answers back, that you feel that's helpful, or does it almost harm the creative process because now there's too much agenda, there's too many voices, answering. I realize this is a really vague question, but
I'm actually really excited to see what kind of filmmakers, like the next generation, what they're going to do, because of how they're growing up. As they're growing up, first of all, the thing they watch more than anything is long form serialized content. How is that going to impact the kind of stories they choose to tell? I fell in movies through movies. Like my favorite things when I was growing up were 90 minutes to 2 hours. Invariably, when I asked them, many of them, their favorite thing is a television show or a streaming show. Or if it is movies, it'll be something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is also a form of serialized storytelling. So I'm super excited to see how does that impact them. I am super excited to also see what do they choose. If they choose to make movies and other kinds of audiovisual content, what do they do given that they grew up with so many other things to do in their lives? Like social media and video games and interactive. Like, how will that influence the few of them who choose to do what we might think of as filmmaking in the future? I'm just really excited about it. Like, I just love the idea of contemplating how each generation of artists is undoubtedly shaped by the time they grew up in, right? And I don't have a lot of pessimism or a lot of complaints. Like, I'm just more excited to see what happens.
It's interesting because it's Halloween time as we shoot this interview, and going to all these different Halloween stores, just how many, Stranger Things, and all these costumes and cool like Halloween gadgets are inspired by some of these shows. And I guess that same thing was around. I know E.T. There was a lot of, I had one little Burger King Elliot doll and different things. But it just seems like now it's even more like there's a thirst for it.
Yeah, and I think that the like a lot of sort of people growing up today, like they are growing up in the era of our media is not just on screen, right? It is expanding out to, there's a Star Wars part of Disneyland, and there are Halloween costumes for Stranger Things, and there are novelizations and podcasts and, branded content. And I think that you could obviously look at that in a cynical way or a commercial way, but I think what's exciting about it is it's a generation of artists who are growing up with the stories they love, they can engage with in so many different ways. For me, I was just starved for content, like just waiting for like the next Star Trek movie to come out, and the fact that they have this ongoing relationship with the things they love, I wish I knew what it was like to grow up like that. I'm sure that will create differences, but it doesn't seem like a pro or con. It just seems like just a really interesting difference, and I'm curious to see what happens because of it.